Let's begin with respect. This isn't just content, it's truth. Most people repeat the same choices, stay busy, but never truly act. Now I want to ask you something and answer honestly in the comments. Which city and country are you watching from? New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, London, or somewhere else? Here is the undeniable truth. Human beings do not fail suddenly. They decay through patterns. Time is not lost dramatically. It leaks through habits, distraction, and unexamined behavior. This is not motivation, this is a warning, because patterns compound and consequences arrive quietly. If you feel stuck, it is not because life is unfair, it is because a mechanism is operating beneath your awareness. In the next moments, you will see why progress has slowed, why clarity feels distant, and how internal disorder creates external confusion. We begin with the first internal evidence. Confusion is rarely accidental. Confusion is rarely accidental. It is constructed through repeated neglect of mental discipline, reinforced daily through avoidance of effort. The mind defaults to comfort before it defaults to truth. It prefers stimulation over structure, reaction over reflection. Thoughts are consumed without hierarchy, opinions are adopted without testing, emotions are trusted without examination. This creates accumulation, not clarity. The internal environment becomes crowded, not organized. People interpret this state as confusion, but confusion is only the visible symptom. The cause is unmanaged cognition. Attention is scattered, priorities are undefined, internal standards are absent. Without standards, every thought feels equally important. Decision-making slows, not because options are complex, but because thinking lacks order. The brain begins to loop, revisiting the same unresolved ideas, amplifying uncertainty. This is how internal noise is produced. Clarity does not disappear, it is buried under mental excess. Awareness begins when a person recognizes that confusion is rehearsed, not imposed. It is learned through repetition. When thinking remains undisciplined, perception bends. Small issues feel large, important decisions feel overwhelming. The mind becomes reactive, not intentional. This reactivity erodes confidence quietly. A person stops trusting their own judgment, not because they are incapable, but because they have not governed their thoughts. Internal leadership is absent. Without leadership, direction feels inaccessible. Guidance requires an ordered mind, because instruction demands precision. Precision cannot land in chaos. This is not a lack of intelligence, it is a lack of mental authority. When authority is missing, doubt fills the space. Awareness begins when responsibility for thought patterns is accepted. Order restores clarity. Discipline restores direction. Direction is often requested externally, while self-governance is avoided internally. Many want guidance without structure. They seek instruction without standards. This creates resistance at a psychological level. A person who refuses to govern themselves will resist being guided, even unconsciously. Rules feel restrictive, accountability feels heavy, discipline feels threatening. This is not defiance, it is avoidance. Guidance requires submission to order. Without order, direction feels intrusive. People confuse freedom with lack of structure, but absence of structure produces anxiety, not autonomy. The mind without boundaries drifts. It reacts to circumstance, mood, and impulse. This creates instability. When internal systems are weak, external direction feels overwhelming. The individual resists not because the direction is wrong, but because it exposes internal disorder. Guidance reveals gaps. Gaps trigger discomfort. Discomfort triggers avoidance. This cycle repeats quietly. Awareness begins when a person sees that resistance to guidance is resistance to responsibility. Self-governance is the foundation of external alignment. Attention must be managed, time must be respected, behavior must be regulated. Without these elements, guidance has nowhere to land. Instruction requires capacity. Capacity is built through discipline. Discipline is not intensity, It is consistency. Without consistency, trust erodes. Trust is required for direction. The mind that lacks order will reinterpret guidance as pressure. This distortion leads to withdrawal. Awareness begins when a person accepts that guidance is earned through governance. Direction follows discipline, not desire. Comfort addiction rarely announces itself. It disguises itself as balance, self-care, or patience. It trains the nervous system to avoid friction and then calls that avoidance wisdom. The mind begins to associate discomfort with danger even when no threat exists. This rewiring is subtle. It happens through repetition. Small compromises are made daily. Rest is taken before effort is completed. Ease is chosen before clarity is earned. Over time, discernment weakens. Not because insight disappears, but because discomfort is no longer tolerated long enough for truth to surface. Discernment requires tension. It requires sitting with unease. Comfort addiction removes that capacity. The brain learns to escape before it understands. When discomfort arises, distraction follows. Noise replaces reflection. Relief replaces responsibility. This creates a psychological dependency. The individual begins to confuse peace with numbness. They avoid situations that demand growth. They avoid conversations that require honesty. They avoid decisions that carry weight. This avoidance dulls perception. Subtle signals are missed. Internal warnings are ignored. Intuition becomes quiet, not because it is absent, but because it is drowned out by comfort-seeking behavior. Fear is often blamed, but fear is loud. Comfort addiction is quiet. Fear triggers action. Comfort delays it. Over time, the person loses the ability to differentiate between resistance and wisdom. Every challenge feels unnecessary. Every stretch feels optional. This erodes discernment at a structural level. The mind becomes biased toward ease. This bias distorts judgment. Easy options feel right. Demanding options feel wrong. This inversion is dangerous. Awareness begins when a person notices that their decisions consistently minimize effort, even when the cost is long-term clarity. Comfort becomes the filter through which all choices are made. That filter blocks truth. Discernment returns only when discomfort is reintroduced intentionally. The ability to stay present under strain must be rebuilt. Without that capacity, guidance is muted. Precision cannot survive in a comfort-dominated mind. Delay often presents itself as wisdom, but psychologically, it is frequently avoidance refined into language. The mind creates narratives to justify inaction. More information is needed. Timing must be perfect. Conditions must improve. These explanations feel reasonable. They reduce internal tension. That reduction is the reward. The nervous system learns that postponement equals relief. This creates a loop. Each delay reinforces the habit. Action becomes heavier over time. Not because the task grows, but because resistance compounds. Delay erodes trust in the self. Promises are made internally, then broken quietly. This fractures integrity at a subtle level. The individual begins to doubt their own follow-through. This doubt weakens authority. Without internal authority, decisions lose weight. Everything feels optional. This state is mislabeled as patience. Patience is active restraint, guided by principle. Delay is passive avoidance driven by discomfort. The difference is internal posture. Patience holds tension with intention. Delay escapes it. Delay creates psychological distance between intention and action. That distance breeds anxiety. Anxiety then justifies further delay. This cycle feels logical while it is destructive. Over time, responsiveness dulls, urgency fades, sensitivity to timing is lost, opportunities pass without recognition, not because they were unclear, but because the individual trained themselves to hesitate. Awareness begins when a person observes their pattern of postponement without judgment. The pattern reveals fear of responsibility, fear of exposure, or fear of irreversible choice. Delay protects the ego. It avoids accountability. It preserves the illusion of potential without the risk of execution. This illusion is seductive. It feels safer than commitment, but it costs momentum. Direction requires movement. Instruction unfolds through action. When action is delayed, feedback is delayed. Without feedback, adjustment cannot occur. Growth stalls quietly. Awareness begins when delay is named accurately. It is not patience. It is resistance seeking comfort. Once named, it can be interrupted. Responsibility restores timing. Action restores clarity. Lack of clarity is often misdiagnosed as complexity, but psychologically, it is usually the result of missing structure. The mind cannot prioritize what has not been defined. When goals remain vague, everything feels urgent. When values are undefined, every option feels equal. This creates cognitive overload. Attention is pulled in multiple directions without resolution. The individual feels busy yet ineffective. Movement occurs, but progress does not. This is not due to limited capability, but due to absent frameworks. Structure provides boundaries. Boundaries create focus. Without focus, clarity dissolves. The brain requires order to sort information. When order is missing, decision-making becomes reactive. Emotional states begin to dictate choices. Mood replaces method. This leads to inconsistency. Inconsistency erodes confidence. Confidence depends on predictability. Predictability comes from systems. Systems require intentional design. Many resist structure because it feels restrictive. In reality, lack of structure is what creates anxiety. Freedom without form becomes chaos. Awareness begins when a person recognizes that clarity is not a feeling, it is a result of organization. When structure is introduced, priorities emerge naturally. Energy stabilizes. Decisions simplify. Direction becomes visible, not because circumstances change, but because the internal environment becomes ordered. Structure does not limit potential, it channels it. Without channels, potential disperses. With channels, it moves with force. Emotional chaos disrupts precision at every level of perception. When emotions are unmanaged, they distort interpretation. Neutral events feel personal. Feedback feels like threat. Silence feels like rejection. This distortion drains cognitive resources. Energy is spent managing reactions rather than analyzing reality. The nervous system stays activated. This state reduces access to higher reasoning. The mind becomes defensive. Defensive minds seek safety, not accuracy. Accuracy is required for precision. When emotions dominate, signals are misread. Intuition is confused with impulse. Urgency is confused with importance. This creates erratic behavior. Erratic behavior erodes trust. Trust is essential for direction. Both internal trust and external alignment depend on emotional regulation. Regulation is not suppression, it is containment. Emotions must be acknowledged, then governed. Without governance, they spill into decision-making. This spill creates noise. Noise blocks clarity. Many interpret emotional intensity as depth. It is not. Depth requires stability. Stability allows observation. Observation allows understanding. Emotional chaos removes the observer. The individual becomes the emotion rather than the witness of it. Awareness begins when a person separates feeling from instruction. Feelings provide data. They do not provide direction. When emotional order is restored, perception sharpens, timing improves, judgment stabilizes, precision returns, because the mind is no longer defending itself from its own internal storms. Direction cannot be heard while excuses are being negotiated internally. The mind splits when justification is allowed to speak alongside instruction. One voice asks for alignment, another asks for relief. Relief usually wins. Excuses soften responsibility. They sound reasonable. They feel protective. They reduce pressure in the moment, but they also reduce accuracy. When excuses are entertained, attention drifts. Standards blur. Action becomes conditional. The individual waits to feel ready. Readiness becomes a moving target. This creates internal bargaining. Bargaining delays movement. Delay weakens conviction. Conviction requires decisiveness. When excuses remain active, instruction feels unclear. Not because guidance is absent, but because it is filtered. The mind edits what it does not want to obey. Awareness begins when a person notices how often they explain instead of execute. Explanation replaces movement. Movement reveals truth. Without movement, direction remains theoretical. Excuses protect comfort. They also block alignment. Inconsistency rarely looks dangerous at first. It looks flexible. It looks forgiving. It feels humane. But psychologically, inconsistency fractures momentum. Each missed commitment weakens internal trust. The mind begins to doubt its own promises. This doubt erodes authority. Without authority, discipline collapses. Action becomes optional. Optional action lacks force. Force is required for progress. Inconsistency also distorts feedback. Patterns cannot be identified when behavior changes randomly. Adjustment becomes impossible. The individual feels stuck, not because effort is absent, but because effort is scattered. Inconsistent behavior keeps potential theoretical. Nothing compounds, nothing stabilizes. Over time, identity fragments. The person no longer knows who they are becoming. Awareness begins when inconsistency is seen as a structural failure, not a personality trait. Consistency creates evidence. Evidence builds confidence. Confidence sustains discipline. Without consistency, calling fades quietly, not through failure, but through neglect. Most people do not lose direction through rebellion, they lose it through convenience. Choices are filtered through ease, speed, and familiarity. This filtering feels efficient. It feels practical. It is not neutral. Convenience removes friction. Friction produces information. Without friction, judgment weakens. People begin to avoid effortful decisions. They protect routines that require less energy. Over time, potential is exchanged for comfort. This exchange happens quietly. No crisis appears, no alarm sounds. Life continues, but depth erodes. The individual stays capable, but underutilized. Awareness begins when convenience is recognized as a decision-making bias. Every time ease is prioritized, growth is postponed. Familiar paths feel safe. Safe paths rarely expand capacity. Direction requires sacrifice of convenience. Without that sacrifice, purpose remains conceptual. Discipline is not emotional, it is procedural. It responds to structure, not desire. Direction interacts with discipline because discipline creates reliability. Reliability creates trust. Trust allows instruction to deepen. When discipline is absent, effort becomes erratic. Erratic effort produces inconsistent outcomes. Inconsistent outcomes confuse perception. Confusion is then blamed on lack of guidance. The real issue is lack of structure. Discipline provides rhythm. Rhythm stabilizes behavior. Stabilized behavior creates clarity. Clarity attracts direction. This sequence is mechanical. It is not inspirational. Discipline is the language direction responds to because it proves readiness. Without discipline, potential remains theoretical. Direction does not engage with theory. It engages with execution. Everything we've examined here is not theory. Confusion, comfort addiction, delay, emotional chaos, inconsistency, and avoidance. These are internal failures that quietly erode potential. They are not dramatic, but they are cumulative. They shape the life you will live if left unexamined. This moment matters because the patterns you tolerate today become the circumstances you inherit tomorrow. There is a heavy truth here. No one will manage your mind, enforce your discipline, or protect your future for you. Responsibility is yours. Clarity is yours. Action is yours. This is the kind of thinking we break down on Myron Thinks, not to motivate you, but to wake you up. Thank you for staying present, for facing what is often ignored, for giving your attention to truth. If you want more deep analytical breakdowns of mindset, habits, and the hidden mechanics of personal growth, subscribe and stay connected. Do not leave this video with emotion alone. Leave it with understanding. Leave it with perspective. Leave it ready to act.